When was the last time you cried in your car? Oh, the privacy, the containment, the doors that lock. I go to my car to grieve, and as it turns out, I'm not alone. As a grief guide and a death doula, I hear weekly accounts of my clients retreating to their cars to grieve. I don't want the neighbors to hear. I don't want my kids to see. I don't want my partner to worry. What if they did? I'm here because it's time for a culture shift from isolation to belonging through grief. When I reflect on my own experience of belonging, I was born with it. I loved and trusted everyone. As a little girl, I would break free from my mom's hand and run across the park and into the laps of startled strangers. As I grew up, I grew more aware of the world's dangers, and my tender heart, and I did what many of us do. I learned to numb, to hide, and to run. Overworking became my favorite hiding spot. I was a successful 20-something-year-old living alone, traveling around the world, and needing nothing from no one. 11 years ago, I quit my job and bought a van, which I built into my home on wheels, an even better hiding spot. No address, no windows even. A perfect place to be alone and to be fine. Until Portland, where 20,000 miles later, my car transformed from a place of isolated independence into one of authentic connection, one friend at a time. It began with Megan hopping in the front seat at the car wash, our first emergency and impromptu grief ritual, full permission for intensity granted by the pounding brushes and gushing waters. Fast forward a few months to 4 of us and a banjo crowded in my car one summer starry night, together grieving the death of a beloved pet, the destruction of the most recent wildfires, the end of a beloved relationship, and the struggles of infertility. It was here in the safety of my parked car that I saw a community growing, and we were going to need more space. Though I was experiencing a deep sense of belonging in my personal life, it had not yet translated to my professional world. I still cringe thinking about the first death I attended as a doula. I pulled up to the apartment complex, my heart racing, and I knocked on the door, and all of my careful preparations evaporated. Words just tumbled out of my mouth, each more inappropriate than the last. Hi, it's good to see you. It's good to be here. How are you today? Just stop speaking, I silently demanded of myself, and retreated to a corner. From my self-imposed exile, I observed the room, and I was not the only one struggling. The hospice nurse busied herself adjusting equipment. The man's wife rearranged his pillows, and my colleague made an awkward joke in an attempt to bridge the distance between us. The air was thick with unspoken fears and a palpable loneliness, even in this crowded room. Sadness was here too, but like me, it seemed to have been exiled. Here we were in this profound moment at the edge of life and death, like a moment we needed each other, and somehow we felt completely alone. It was here that I knew we could do better. I knew I would do better. I began to get curious. Why do some spaces of grief leave us feeling loved, seen, and connected, while others deepen our wounds of loneliness? I'm going to come back to that, but first, let's talk about what grief actually is. When most people hear the word grief, they think death. And yes, death. But more than death, change. Grief is present with all change, even the good change, even the change you choose. There's grief in the divorce completing, in the addiction breaking, in the winter falling, in becoming a parent, in deciding not to, in taking the new job, in the Earth's changing climate, in our aging bodies. There's grief in not getting what you expected. and also in getting what you expected. Grief is a universal human experience. It's a natural response to loss, separation, and change. After being with over 5,000 grievers, I've learned that grief is not a burden to be shed, and it's not something we get done doing. Grieving is a continued expression of our love and a declaration of what we long for. In facilitating and attending hundreds of grief rituals, I've seen that when we co-create intentional spaces for grief, where we share, sit, and be present with all that arises, something extraordinary happens. Belonging happens. Over and over, I watch grievers uncover this simple truth, that the vulnerability we fear will push others away is actually what's needed to bring them close. This vulnerability is the medicine for a culture sick with loneliness. And hey, that's us. We're in an epidemic of loneliness. And loneliness is not an abstract idea. Neuroimaging has shown that unbelonging, I'm talking isolation, disconnection, and feeling excluded, is registered by the brain as a physical injury. Imagine having to go to your work, show up to your family and your life every day with a massive open wound that no one can see. Maybe you don't have to imagine. 1 in 4 Americans report feeling lonely, and that number is on the rise. Okay, but what about belonging? And when I say belonging, I'm really talking about relationships. An ongoing 80-year study out of Harvard has shown that strong relationships are a better predictor of happiness and health later in life than social class, IQ, fame, or wealth. And seniors with strong social connections showed 70% less cognitive decline than their more isolated peers. This is a big deal for us as individuals, but what about the impact on our communities? Research after Hurricane Sandy showed that communities with stronger pre-existing social ties recovered faster and experienced less PTSD. These were not communities with more resources. They were communities with more relationships. Grief is universal, but so is belonging. Belonging is the foundation of wellness. It's the antidote to loneliness, and like grief, it's a practice. Grieving together is a practice of belonging. That is the foundation of personal and collective healing, yes, but also of community resilience and societal transformation. Did you know that living rooms used to be called death rooms in the 19th century? They were places for the laying out of the dead and for the gathering to celebrate life. Let's bring grief back home into the living. Let our living rooms become classrooms of grief literacy, where we learn, practice, and grow skillful in tending our grief together. This is how we create resilient communities, anchored in connection and capable of radical transformation, one living room at a time. This is what the research calls belonging, and what I call coming home. Now it's your turn. Think of one person that you can tell the truth with. Invite them to be with you in what you're longing for and what you're grieving. Text them tonight. I'm opening my living room. For all that weighs heavy on our hearts, will you come? The revolution begins in your living room, where belonging is birthed and tended as we remember how to grieve together.